Ghost of Yotei focuses on player freedom more than any game Sucker Punch has ever made. But it's also a game that at its heart is inspired by so many of our favorite wandering samurai films. So let's start off by talking about exploration at the edge of Japan.
Following the recent State of Play broadcast, Sucker Punch's Jason Connell and Nate Fox sat down with me for a special episode of VGC the Video Game Podcast all about Ghost of Yotei. We asked about Jin Sakai, comparisons to Assassin's Creed Shadows and historical accuracy, and what motivated their change in open world philosophy.
First of all, it definitely is inspired by as creators of the last game, and played it a ton, and the amount of people that did play it, we certainly felt like that as we go to create a new game, and we decided it was going to be in Hokkaido, which and Ezo at the time period, this massively vast place that would only seem fitting a bit to also increase the way that we think about the freedom of the game. Like what does it feel like to explore? Like, what are your options? How do we feed you your next sort of golden path? Like the vengeance quest. To us, it really felt like an evolutionary step for us to be able to think about what freedom means to the player, and to allow some new ways in which you might be able to uncover something that might be interesting for you. Like if you're a player that is really motivated by story, it might be, you might be going down this path. But if you're a player that's super motivated by getting new weapons, slightly different path, right? They can converge, and that's great. And sometimes they're very close to each other, but really wanting to create a game that is fitting for the various types of play styles that comes with creating a game to this many people.
Open world games are unique in that they give power to players. And while we really work very hard to make a story that will stick with you and create senseis who will teach you new weapons that you can use to fight kind of classic samurai combat battles, want players to go after the sort of gameplay experience they want. But the thing that Jason and I love the most is that moment when you're on your horse and you're looking at this big, beautiful landscape. And maybe the wind is telling you, oh, if you would like to continue the story, go that way. But you see something out of the corner of your eye that catches your curiosity, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go check that out. That moment where the game's not telling you really about where to go or what to do, it's you just deciding that you want to do that because you're curious. That is the most beautiful thing about open world games. And so Ghost of Yotei is really built to harness and build as many of those curiosity and exciting moments as we can, because for us, that's the moment when you're really and truly lost inside of the world, moving under your own power, and just wanting to find out what's over that hill because you've got a little hint of what's to come.
Excellent. I feel like these player-driven exploration games such as Elden Ring, where you're given very little context and you kind of have to interpret the story, are becoming more popular. But I know Ghost of Tsushima was extremely popular with newer players and newcomers to the genre. Is this game going to accommodate those players as well? And how does that work in the context of the Yotei 6, the overarching storyline in the game?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we love about Ghost is that there's a whole bunch of options to make it your experience, whether it's just settings for difficulty, which we'll get into the specifics of that later, but it's built off the success from the last game. As difficulty is an axis of sort of engagement and accessibility for people. And we like that we have this approachable, poetic, samurai-inspired cinema game. Like, that is not going away. And so the trick for us as creative directors and as designers and artists is to create a game that provides that extra level of freedom that we strive for, and for those players to enjoy. And some of that's simple, like create tools, like a new spyglass. Like that's just a new tool that we didn't have in the last game. It's really simple, quick, and fast, and easy to use. But at the same time, we're never going to abandon that structure of story. You can't. It's very difficult to create a story with no structure. You're gonna have a beginning. You're gonna have a middle. You're gonna have an ending. So while her journey is to hunt down the Yotei 6. And for sure, in the opening of the game, or in the very opening kind of experience of the game, there will be some choices about which path you want to go to get things going. But by no means are we going to try to say, oh, all 6 you can kind of do in any order with no story structure. We just value story so much. So it's that balance between, without giving you all the details, it's a balance between ensuring that people have the approachable sort of game experience. They want to go do story. It'll be very sort of thoughtful for that type of experience. But if you want to go and hunt down and find some weapons and gear up and effectively level up, then there's a path for you in that world too.
Sucker Punch, we are huge fans of origin stories. In making Ghost of Yotei, we wanted to create a new hero that players would get to know from the ground up as they evolved and changed and grew into who they were going to become as Ghost of Yotei. Atsu's story of vengeance is a great jumping off point for so much more about how she interacts with the wilds of Ezo and the people she meets there during this really interesting time in history in Ezo itself.
During the broadcast, you showed off the new bounty system. I wanted to know, is that emergent gameplay? Can I find those enemies without having to look for the clues if I just come across them naturally? Or is it more structured? How does that element of it work?
One of my favorite new additions to the Ghost franchise is the bounties. I think they fit so well into the world. It's a bit of a lawless landscape. It feels a bit wild up here. And then here they are, these bounties that you can kind of rip off and go, and you get a last known position. So you kind of get a last known position, and then once you get to that last known position, you kind of have to figure out where they are from there. And that's great if you find the bounty first. That's awesome. But what if you're just exploring? We talked about different play styles, right? I didn't go to that town to go find missions or whatever. I went way off on the edges, and I'm riding around the foothills of Mount Yotei, and I come across that bounty. In most cases, those bounties will be there and they will exist. And you don't actually have to go and find that specific bounty poster to get that mission started. You can actually just go on your own free will as an explorer and come across this criminal or outlaw, whatever it might be that you're looking for, and happen to find this person, and you'll quickly understand that it's a bounty, and then you can be able to get it. And that is trying to engage both types of players is a good example, and I quite like that type of experience because I'm a big wide player. I like to go explore the whole world and see what I can find.
I also wanted to know, you're building all of this bespoke content at obviously great cost, and we've talked a lot about in recent years in the games industry how much this stuff costs to make. How, as directors, do you feel comfortable letting players essentially ignore or perhaps miss a lot of this stuff because they want to forge their own path? Is there ever a temptation to force them down specific paths so that they're not missing great side characters, great side moments?
That's such a great question. Of course, when we make these anthology of side stories, all these little moments and big moments to encounter, we would hope players find them all, but the cost of freedom is that they might not find them all, and they might come at it this direction versus this direction. And it's worth it because we are, of course, game players, and we know that perfect moment where you feel like you've experienced something that no one else has, particularly in open world games where there's a collision of systems and story that make it very much your own. So all of us here at Sucker Punch are ready for players to potentially not see things that we've really put our hearts into, because for those that do find them, it's going to feel more special.
You've spoken a lot about how some of the more cliche checkbox open world elements will be removed or changed in some way for this game. Does that change how long the game's going to be? How would it compare, say, to a Platinum Trophy run of the first game comparing to Yotei?
We designed the game in mind with some of the similar numbers in terms of like scale and scope of the last experience. In that way, we actually found it to be quite satisfying, and there were some good numbers to jump off of. So we feel that the experience for playing through full playthrough of Ghost of Yotei, whether you're like just ripping through the story, or you're somebody that likes to just go through the whole world and explore, or you're that, hardcore platinum chaser, that it is a similar experience we expect in terms of the time commitment.
Ghost of Tsushima was released right at the end of the PlayStation 4 generation, and then it was quickly ported to PlayStation 5. What were the lessons learned in that transition now that you're making a game exclusively for the PlayStation 5?
It was such an incredible experience making Ghost of Tsushima for the PlayStation 4, and then pretty quickly seeing how that game showed up on the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 is, of course, an incredible piece of hardware, but let's face it, this controller's magnificent. I love the haptics. I love all of the way the touchscreen works. Ghost of Yotei is built from the ground up to use the PlayStation 5, to have those lightning fast loads, to be able to use the DualSense controller to its maximum effect. And we learned a lot of lessons by seeing Ghost of Tsushima through the lens of that controller that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So it gave us a head start on how to make Yotei as PS5 friendly as possible, and really to come alive through that controller, which I adore. And we could not have made this game without the PS5's features, which we're very happy to be making a game exclusively, really targeted for this controller.
We do have some the Pro enhanced stuff that we'll be talking about. We don't have the specifics that we've revealed just quite yet, but we're excited about being able to share some more of those details pretty soon.
Another game set in Japan this year, extremely popular, was Assassin's Creed Shadows, and there was a lot of extremely heightened discourse, some in bad faith obviously, about the game's historical accuracy. I wanted to know how much of that is important to you in the development of a game like this, especially in the context of how the real life country of Japan and a lot of those players react to the first game, and your experiences visiting there since then.
Our game is very inspired by history, but we are not making a stone for stone recreation of Hokkaido in 1603. Our game is a work of fiction. However, we do want to make the world feel authentic and be very respectful to the cultures that existed there. Thankfully, we are part of Sony. So we have a lot of colleagues in Tokyo that really help us out, that give us a lot of guidance. And on top of that, because this game is set in Hokkaido, we have people who help us best represent the Ainu culture. We want to be as faithful as we can to do right by this group of people that are not often portrayed in video games. And so we have these guides that review our game, review scripts to make sure that we're doing right by the groups that we're portraying inside of this game, that while fiction has a feeling of authenticity to it.
For us, we want to make a piece of entertainment that can be for the whole world to enjoy. That's something that is a big goal for us, that is built off of our love for samurai cinema that we've shared, Nate and I both share, and many people in our studio share. And the only way to do that, as proved by Tsushima and now with Yotei, will be surrounding ourselves with advisors that understand that we're making entertainment. They understand that we're, in this case, working, a really strong piece of a work of fiction, and help us build a world that is respectful and thoughtful, and even take historical or geographical sort of elements from those regions or that time period and bring them forward to players of the whole world to experience. And again, the only way to do that is by having a multitude of different types of advisors to sort of guide us on our journey.
When the game was first revealed, a lot of the fan base who have become very attached to Jin Sakai through PS4, PS5 and the Iki Island were disappointed that this wasn't a direct sequel starring him. I wanted to know, was it ever at any point during development a direct sequel, or was this origin story and this different time period something that the team was pretty set on from the start?
We love Jin Sakai. We spent a lot of years bringing his story to life. But when we are going to start off on the long road to creating a sequel, we wanted to make something that we all at Sucker Punch got excited to buy, and we think that enthusiasm and love for building an origin story comes through for players being able to experiencing something very new as well. Atsu's story is very rich and a lot of unexpected things happen, and part of it is getting to know these new characters. So while we really love Jin Sakai and his story of letting go of his honor to become the ghost, we wanted to let players experience this new version of what it is to be a ghost in feudal Japan. This case being thought of as this kind of larger than life Onryo character that is kind of a walking legend in the far-reaching lands of Ezo.
And just finally, as we run out of time, the power fantasy in Ghost of Tsushima was an interesting one to me, because by the end of the game, each time I played it, I always felt extremely powerful, and that might be because I went and did everything before the final mission. But for a game where you're very much promoting that a player can explore their own way and do as much or as little of the open world content as they want, how do you manage Atsu's power, and what is the gameplay challenge going to feel like in this game compared to in Ghost of Tsushima?
It's a really, really thoughtful question. So with Atsu and her journey of vengeance and becoming sort of her own, legend within Ezo, she starts off from a position of this folk legend, the Onryo that Nate just mentioned. And obviously for a game, and we value progression so much in all of our games, and Nate and his team does such a good job with this, that you're going to be getting stronger. You're going to be getting new weapons, and you're going to be getting access to new abilities and people that teach you how to do new things, like weapon senseis give you new weapons. You might meet new people and train with them to get new abilities. And that's the power sort of climb, if you will, right? Like that's an important part of it. And for Atsu, without getting into the actual specific story details, starting off with this a bit more chaotic sort of Onryo inspired sort of kind of story, where she goes in her journey from this lone wolf to having her own wolf pack and people surrounding her life, will have to sort of it's like a journey of maybe even a little bit more maybe control, a little bit more sort of understanding those unique abilities and those weapons and those relationships and how important they might be to her life.
Thank you very much to Nate and Jason for joining me on this special episode of VGC the Video Game Podcast. We'll have more on Ghost of Yotei as we approach the October release date. Remember to subscribe to VGC and consider checking out patreon.com/videogameschronicle. We'll see you next time.